Okay, I just realized that nobody heard what I was saying. All right, so I'm about to start now officially. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Yewande Abiose. I'm the Managing Director of Energy Institute Nigeria. The Energy Institute is a professional membership body bringing together global energy expertise. We gather and share knowledge about energy and how best to use it. So you're all welcome to another edition of the WEN webinar. I'd like to begin by introducing the president of WEN, Mrs. Fumi Ogwe. She's also the CEO of Sigma Energy. Madam Fumi, can you please do a quick welcome for us?
Thank you very much, Yewande. Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to see you. And I'm very happy to be here. I'd like to thank all of you for joining us for this fourth WEN webinar. I'd also like to thank our panelists for taking their afternoon to be with us. I'd like to thank them for honoring our invitation. I'd like to thank Yewande and the rest of the people at WEN that have worked tirelessly to make this happen. And specifically, I'd like to thank Mr. Inoyo, who is our trustee, to welcome him to this webinar, and to ETC and Lonadec for making this event happen. As you all know, the energy industry is a very important source of technology solutions and revenue for many nations, for many businesses, and a major source of livelihood for many individuals around the world. Sadly, less than 15% of those people are women. So it is as a result of this that we have come together to form the Women in Energy Network. It's a not-for-profit, and what we aim to do is to provide a platform for women to thrive, to grow, and to succeed in the industry. Our vision is to be that leading network that promotes the participation and advancement of women in the most senior positions across the value chain of energy in support of national development. So we have programs that not only educate, but motivate and empower women to grow and to get into top positions. We have an academy as well that is aimed at making sure we have a good pipeline. And today, this webinar is not only aimed at ensuring that those that are already in senior positions learn something, but feel comforted that there's many other people that are rooting for them to succeed. So we have this and so many other things that we've put on for the rest of the year as a way of making sure we create an environment where women can thrive. Tomorrow we have another event. It's called our Power Meeting. It's essentially 3 hours to network and engage with key stakeholders and industry leaders. Our theme for tomorrow is Think Big and Act Fast. We will bring on speakers who will be able to speak about the large projects in gas and renewables and technology in our industry. It's happening tomorrow. Like I said, it starts at 6 and it finishes at 9. I'm sure towards the end of this event, there will be a poster that's put up, and I'd like to encourage you to join us for that event as well. Without much further ado, I'd like to hand over back to Yewande so that she can introduce the panelists that we have. They're fine people, and they have a lot of experience in the topic. So I'll encourage you to listen to them, enjoy, and learn. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you. So today's dialogue is themed Leadership, Agility, and Resilience in Uncertain Times. The current business climate caused by the pandemic is a defining leadership moment as organizations are facing uncertainty and, in some cases, a total threat to the existence of their business. Leaders are having to rethink their business models, create fresh market strategies, adopt new technologies, while keeping their companies profitable and their people motivated and productive. The way organizations lead and manage change in this new normal time is critical to business performance and their ability to remain competitive and relevant. So in other words, as an industry leader, we need to navigate effectively through our current challenges and position ourselves to succeed for the future. Today, our speakers will discuss how they do this on a day-to-day basis and how they also do this effectively and the different strategies they do relating to business models, products and services they offer, procedures and processes. They'll also look in terms of external strategies, so relating to partnerships, stakeholder relationships, customer service, and of course, community outreach. Also corporate social responsibility. Our speakers will give an insight into how to lead their organization, how they lead their organizations, so I beg your pardon, and explain how their leadership qualities evolve and what skills are required in these uncertain times. So just a quick note on how today's session will go. We'll start with a 30-minute discussion where all the speakers will speak on the theme. We'll then have them also put together their thoughts afterwards. Then after, we put up some polling questions to help keep this webinar interactive. So please, when the polling questions come up, would appreciate if you vote so that we can let you know what we think about the results being seen. So without much ado, I'd like to now introduce all my different speakers. We've got Patricia Simon Hart. She's the founder and managing director of Aftrac Limited, an oil and gas service company that has been in operation for over 20 years. She's also the current secretary to the executive board of Petroleum Technology Association, which is PETAN, and a co-founder and vice president of Women in Energy. She has over 30 years experience in management, public policy, and administration. My second speaker is Elena Faber. She's the local content manager, global sustainable procurement at ExxonMobil. She's an oil and gas professional with over 20 years experience. Eliana has expertise in different areas in upstream, from exploration and drilling projects and other production affiliates. She has experience in supporting new ventures in Latin America, Asia, and also the Middle East. My third speaker is Mr. Udo Manoyo. He's the founder of Onoyo Toro Foundation. He is an accomplished oil and gas industry professional, and he just retired in May 2020 as the vice chair of ExxonMobil in Nigeria. He worked at the company for over 37 years, I beg your pardon, 31 years, and also served at various times as the chair of the Public and Government Affairs Human Resource Subcommittees at OPTS, which is the Lagos Chambers of Commerce and Industry. He has been a frequent speaker on issues relating to leadership, human capacity development, business culture, ethics, and integrity. Now I'd like to invite Madam Patricia as she gives her presentation. But Toby, please put up my polling question now if it's ready. Otherwise, Madam Patricia, please start, and once it comes up, we can just take it. Okay, it's come up. Yes, great. Sorry. So the question has come up now. Can everyone please just read through the question, which is, in the last 6 months, has the organization experienced disruptive change? So you have to sort of tell us what kind. Is it a major change into the business? Is it a major change that has some long-term impact, or is it a slight change? We want to know how your organization is doing. And there's some people that would say there's no change at all. So please feel free to vote there. Thank you. I think we have just about 30 seconds. I don't think my panelists can vote, so it's just the audience that would vote. Okay, Toby, can we please have the results for this poll? Perfect. Wow, that's interesting. So everyone, 48% think there's a major change and it could have some long-term impact. Patricia, what do you think about this? So you have to unmute.
Thanks, Yewande. Yes, indeed, there is major change and it will have long-term impact. I think you should try and remember what happened during 9/11, and that was a shock and was even localized, but it had global impact. In this instance, we have a global crisis, which has had a global impact and is going to continue having global impact. But what we're seeing is that we're seeing change in attitude and change in organizational culture, which is going to impact businesses, the way people do business going forward. So I believe there will be a long-term impact, and I don't think we're going to go back to business as usual.
Thank you for that. Thank you. So you can go ahead with your presentation now.
Thanks again. And thanks to all the participants who've logged in today. Today's a proper day. For taking your time out to do that. Just thank you. So I should be addressing this topic from an oil and gas service company perspective. And my focus is going to be more on the leadership style one should actually adopt during a crisis. What type of coping mechanism should you put in place? What processes do you need to build your business and to mitigate any future shocks? Finally, and how do you really adjust to the emerging new normal and all the market disruptions which you faced? So I don't think there's any company that was ready for this crisis. It was a double whammy for the oil and gas sector. We had COVID-19 as well as the oil price shocks, as everybody knows. Most of our organizations in the oil sector and the oil service sector have very robust emergency management and response procedures in place already. And they also have very good business continuity processes and plans. Most of us are ISO 9001 certified and all those processes in place. But we can see during this crisis, all that has been tested. And as we can see, that it's not just a normal crisis or a one-off event. It's sort of an evolving event that's been going on and continues to emerge. So every day you wake up to something new, literally. And then we saw it was global, as I said earlier, it's a global disruptions, global reach. So even it's not just a localized event. And all this actually impacts the businesses, the way we're doing business, and how we're to respond to it. And then, of course, the worst part of it was the high incidence of death. And because of that, we could see most people have to put health and safety first. Now, typically in a crisis environment, we have like 5 stages within a crisis. You have the preparation, so that's the preparation I was talking about, emergency response systems, crisis management systems you have in your organization, business continuity, that's all there. But then you have the crisis itself. So most of us are prepared for some kind of emergency, but this kind of event, nobody was prepared. So we are all reacting to an event that has happened within our organization suddenly. And for smaller organizations like the small and medium size indigenous service companies, what you're finding is that the leadership within the organizations are the most important thing to help the organizations, the smaller organizations survive. So as I said, the crisis itself came. You have to assess the situation as a leader. You need to know where you are. And you need to accept the situation. I mean, we say there's fire on the mountain. There was indeed fire on the mountain in this situation, except there is fire on the mountain. What do we do? And so you need to act to drive this crisis into what you understand, into processes, internal processes and systems that work. So that try and drive it to that, what you understand, you put in place for your emergency response. So as much as possible, try and drive the crisis to that and put in place those plans that work for you and find out what's not working at the moment and address it. So there was the response to the COVID crisis, which we all knew, which is self-isolation. So there's after the crisis event itself, we start to respond. So the response in this case was all lockdown, social distancing, better hygiene practices, and then the organizations had to respond to that. So every organization was locked down and couldn't operate in the same way they used to. So we now had to respond to the COVID-19 response, which was identifying as an organization what were our key essential operations that we needed to function. And so we had to stabilize that as an organization. How do we stabilize those key functions? Who are those key personnel that we need to keep operational? And then begin to mobilize them to operate. Empower them for continuity of operations, whether it's a virtual office, whatever you're doing, but we have to put something in place in our own instance. And then we also had to look at our financial projections and try and reduce our operating costs as much as possible. And then we had to engage our customers, engage our suppliers. We had, equipment and supplies on the way. We had to try and engage as much as possible. And we also had to engage financial institutions. So there was a lot of engagement going on. And then also engage the staff, of course, so people know what's going on continuously. So we're now in sort of what we call, I would say, some kind of recovery phase, and we're building resilience, but at the same time, we're trying to recover. So there's this concept that they're calling adaptive recovery, where you're supposed to plan. You're planning to implement, for this new normal. Envision for you as a company what this new normal is going to look like. I mean, it's not going to be business as usual. So start planning and thinking ahead. There is a new normal emerging. What is it? How prepared is your company for, digital transformation? For this? And then how agile is your company? I mean, how are you able to renew yourself as a company? Are you able to adapt to these new changes quickly? And I think for small organizations, it might be easier. For small organizations also, because the founder and leader is sort of the pillar within the organization, it's probably easier. But even for small organizations and medium-sized companies, they still need to look at the foundation and basis of the company, and what their core values are, and what's the purpose of the company, what do they stand for, and begin to reassess all that, But it's all about people, and it's all about your purpose as a company. And so for your people, and what have you noticed within? Like for us, I've noticed a lot of people, employees are reacting differently to the new culture of the organization, or the new way we're doing business. Some aren't able to cope. So you have to identify those leaders within, and those that can cope with the new normal, and begin to reorganize your organizations within. You also need to begin to balance, this the organizational purpose as against the safety of your personnel, because safety for us is key, and it's one of our main core values. So safety, and making sure people are healthy and safety. And so for us, it was like we shut down operations really early, even before the government has shut down operations completely. We shut down and tried to operate, at least for the back office staff. We had to do what we could to make sure everybody was safe and not expose people. And then, you need to structure your performance to drive, as I said, that crisis to some kind of normalcy and procedures and systems and just routine. And that what gives your staff some kind of stability, or some kind of security or sense of security. And then you need to, as an organization, begin to look at the opportunities that are emerging in the new normal. So as I said, for small organizations, the resilient leader, and in any organization really, but through a crisis, the resilient leader, or a leader that demonstrates resilience, is the kind of leadership that you need to get through a crisis. And so we're just going to look at this kind of leadership. So typically leaders, that's, business 101, leaders that communicate to people, and people follow leaders basically. But during a crisis, it's very important that you demonstrate calmness and empathy at the same time. So you need to be calm, be in control, not go down, because you tend to, when a crisis comes, go into the basement, you can shut down and act out of panic. But you need to be calm, take your time, assess the situation, and begin to take decisions based on that. And then be empathetic towards your staff, because they're going through their own crisis. Some may be ill, some may be stressed by the situation. Some might not be able to cope because they have children they're trying to cope with at home, as well as trying to do work at home. So be a bit empathetic as well. And then also communicate. You need to communicate and communicate and communicate again, so they clearly know where you stand as an organization, what's happening, what's coming, what the changes are, and they're able to adapt to it. And then, as I said, you need to accept the situation, accept it, and keep things in perspective. What is, what's the worst case scenario? Do your scenario settings and see, how you're going to adapt if this happens, and what happens if your supplies don't come in, what happens, and then just anticipate and plan going forward. And then you have to remain positive, and that is also communicated to your staff, because it's how positive you are. Are you being just negative about everything and have given up, concerning everything, or you're positive? And then look for the new goals, look for the new opportunities that are beginning to emerge, and how you're going to position your business to take advantage of those opportunities that are coming up. Then, as this part where there is the crisis, but then there's also the politics of the crisis, which typically a private sector company say, what do I have to do with government? But you have everything to do with government because they shut down operations. And this time we saw this as PETAN. We saw that we were able to, because of the relationships we built with government in the past, we're able to have those links and engage government on various issues that would help our organizations and member organizations within PETAN. We saw that a lot. So understanding the politics is very important. What is the government saying? What's the narrative? What's the public narrative? What is the truth? What's out there that you can communicate to your staff to give them some confidence? And so we need to keep that in mind, that there is the politics to any crisis as well. Then situational awareness for the leader, that you need to have very high situational awareness. So you need to look at and see how is it affecting your workforce, your customers, your suppliers, logistics support, your contracts, technology and infrastructure, of course, and then your regulators and all stakeholders. And then finally, your cash flow is very, very important. So I'm not going to repeat myself on mitigating the crisis, but for us to restart work safely, as I said, you have to look at your cash flow. Cash flow is very important to see, when are you going to be distressed? How are you going to mitigate that, and what are you putting in place? And don't wait till you run out of money. You need to start finding ways to address those issues. So restarting work, the field operations, things have changed a lot, and we're able to establish new protocols within organizations. So health and safety has been very active there. And then assessing our employees on their exposure and the risks. We really concerned about our staff. And then train and retrain our employees. We've done that. We've gone through a lot of awareness training and program on COVID-19. And then make sure that, the ones who do go to the rig, that we don't have as high turnover of personnel on the rig, because there's also a longer lead time, 2 weeks before you go on. So stay there for the maximum time before you come back. And then just review our policies in general. We've been doing that. And then, of course, the general workforce management is just making sure the PPEs are in place and that they have established the social distancing protocols within the organization. I think I've really run out of time, but working remotely was one of the key things we put in place. Communication, we had to make sure we had a virtual communication. Fortunately, we're already working with a lot of cloud-based tools, and that we're really fortunate. So most of my operations are online already because I travel around a lot. And so we just, step that up a bit to Zoom, WhatsApp, and use those to communicate more than we would before. I wasn't really a WhatsApp communication person, but I've been doing a lot more of WhatsApp. Zoom meetings are regular and often. Work processes have clear policies and procedures and protocols. Also, our work processes change. The way we assess staff is more key performance indicators, task management, which they all need to report, so it's slightly reporting systems have changed. And then just collaborating using the tools we have. So basically that's what we've done as in managing cash flow to whatever. But basically you need to have a proper crisis management plan put in place for your organization, plan for the future, plan for the next crisis, build from what we've learned in this crisis and be ready for anything else that might come up in the future. Identify a spokesperson within the company, communicate with employees and continue to communicate, and then prepare to work remotely. I think it's very, very important. You need to prepare. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ma. So we'll put that poll question up. So if everyone could please answer the next poll question before we invite Eliana up to do her presentation. That was very insightful, Madam Patricia. Thank you. So the question is, do you believe that your organization's leaders and leadership structures are resilient? So if you could just vote. Do you think it's adequately equipped? Do you think it's slightly equipped? Or do you think it's not equipped at all? Okay, so we're just going to give everyone another 20 seconds. Okay, I think this is a pretty good picture. A lot of people do think they are quite adequate. A few people think that 6% of our audience think they're not equipped at all. Eliana, any thoughts on this?
Yes, I'm actually very happy to see that big percentage, or at least almost half of the responses, because that's something that we found while we were coping with COVID-19, that most of the suppliers that we were trying to engage and have a contract, they were not prepared and they didn't have a business continuity plan. So that kind of, it was always frustrating, because we wanted to engage more local suppliers, especially in countries where we have an affiliate and we are established, and also countries where we have just started with the project phase, development phase. And that was the part that kind of surprised us, that not all the suppliers were ready and were well equipped. I think a very important tool for every supplier, regardless of the size, it can be small, medium, or a large company, have to have a business continuity plan. So
thank you for that. Thank you. So please go ahead and do your presentation.
Sure. Thank you. Okay, well, welcome everyone to this webinar. I'm very honored to be participating in this panel together with my other colleagues. And what I'm going to present is a different perspective. It's mainly of how XML leadership has been facing this difficult times, and especially on the procurement initiative, the procurement side. So as you know, I'm in the global sustainable procurement. I have under my responsibility local content to make sure that we utilize local suppliers and local workforce in the countries or projects where we operate. But also I have the piece of global supply diversity, which is pretty much integrating diverse suppliers in our supply chain. So with that, like my former colleague, we all kind of introduce our talks with explaining what happened, and I don't think we need too many words to describe what's happening. But in the case of the oil and gas industry, we started facing a difficult and challenging time with the crash of the oil price. We started having very difficult times at the end of 2019, and so we all were already kind of prepared for a very kind of for a perfect storm. And then surprise, COVID came along, and so we needed to come up with a plan. And that's where I would say that our leadership within the organization, XML actually trained and give all the tools to leaders and to kind of be ready to face this. And so I would say that in our organization, we are very resilient. And this is how we say here in Texas, this is not our first rodeo. So we have been dealing with crises like this in different areas. However, a pandemic, and this is the first time that we all, in this generation at least, lived through a pandemic. So we have been facing a lot of changes. Working from home has been one. For some, we enjoy it. For others, it's kind of hard. We don't not only have our kids here, also at home, but different situations. So you have to even step up as a leader at your own home office. The fact that we don't have our team members in front of us, that doesn't mean that we cannot do our piece of contribution. So I'm very proud of belonging to an organization as procurement that we are very strong in terms of taking the lead and coming up with initiative during difficult times. So what I'm going to share here is some of the initiatives that we started implementing as soon as we started hitting the beginning of the year. And some of them are related to local content, and others are also based here in the US. But as soon as we start seeing how the supply chain were getting disrupted, we started doing purchases regionally, for example, especially for PPE. We contact suppliers that were local in a specific affiliate, but we try to purchase as much as we could for the rest of the region. And then as soon as other affiliates, procurement affiliates, identify key suppliers that can provide it, then we were also centralizing this kind of purchases. One of the most important thing, and the one that I would say had most of the impact, was the unbundling of large scope of work, because that typically you have suppliers or large suppliers that can do integrated services. So if you split those services and give it to small suppliers and local suppliers that actually didn't have to mobilize people or equipment, or didn't have to wait to bring some of the goods and services, or even raw material in the country. So that actually helps a lot. So that sometimes is not possible. So as much as we would like to give most of the scope of work to local suppliers, sometimes these suppliers are not ready. And the integrity and the safety of operations, that's what it's the most important. So that's what it's so important to create plans for developing the capabilities of suppliers. To concentrate on the major purchases, we had to defer a lot of acquisition of non-critical materials and services, so that actually give us time and to actually be more strategic about the critical services and materials. Source locally, we try to get try to involve new suppliers, including women-owned businesses. We always are big supporters of bidding all we can. They're sometimes not possible because you have suppliers that are the only ones that can provide those goods and services. But in this case, we actually give the opportunity to suppliers, especially for services that were not critical. We try to give them more opportunities to those suppliers. And we actually got a lot of success stories, especially with women-owned businesses. We actually started monitoring the suppliers' financial health and their capabilities, also to kind of start getting more information about what they can do and consider them for future operations, for future tender process. We maximize the use of existing supplier registration portals. Those are kind of supplier databases that we have, but they're, we like to use the information that we have there, because we're asking things like, if you're a women-owned business, if you have specific, if you're able to or willing to partner with larger companies. Some small and medium enterprises are not very excited about becoming a tier 2 supplier, and I'll tell you, and I keep telling to all these small medium enterprises that becoming a tier 2, it's the best opportunity you have to become a tier 1 in the future, because that's how you learn how to bring your business and make it competitive, by learning through an experience in large supplier. We have held a number of virtual forums. I mean, this type of opportunities, you can have a lot of suppliers that are listening to our messages, so that's another way to learn. We have done it in different other spaces where we connect a lot of those suppliers and give them information. And in places where we have enterprise development centers, specifically we are talking about here our EDC in Guyana, where we had, the EDC is kind of like a school for suppliers, and we have switched from face-to-face classes to virtual courses. So that's some of the initiatives that we have. But what I wanted to highlight is, what did our leaders see when we were facing that? And now this is something that you don't have to really have a special lenses or glasses to see where the risks and the opportunity, but the idea is that you identify it and take advantage of the risk and use your strengths to mitigate those risks, and also take advantage of the opportunities. So as I mentioned before, and it had to do with the poll that we had, we noticed a big absence of business continuity plans. And this is something that it's a document, but you have to test it and you have to have one. So I encourage all those suppliers, regardless of your size, even if you're a small one, have a business continuity plan. If you don't know how to develop one, look for someone that can help you, talk to big companies or other companies that have one. And it is not here to copy, because every business is different, but have one, because you can imagine how much does it help to be proactive and to kind of have everything you need by the time we have this kind of situations. So these are other risks that we have there, but I want to focus on the opportunities, because that's where I'm sure you guys are interested. But we are always discovering new suppliers and diverse suppliers. So for us, this is very important, because I know a lot of suppliers are waiting to get this opportunity. And it's not that because you're a diverse supplier or you're a women-owned business, you're going to have more opportunities, you're going to have an advantage. We are trying to open all these opportunities to all the suppliers. That means that we are increasing our supplier qualification. We're doing informal testing of capabilities, and we try to see how can we encourage, or how can we even work together with governments to make it possible for local suppliers to produce and manufacture local, and then even helping them to bring raw material as a big volume. Sometimes small suppliers cannot bring large volumes because of their capabilities. So, but if they get together, maybe that can leverage some of the volumes. More competitive bidding, I think this is where procurement leaders should be creating more and more opportunities, because that even if supplier don't get the award, don't get the contract, you can imagine how much can you learn by participating in tender process. So sorry for my dog. This is one of the things of working from home. But anyway, so I also want to show you how we actually are leading the way in terms of bringing all this and making sure that we do all this initiative, and how we stay committed to develop local supplier capabilities, even during challenging times. The pandemic definitely has brought up new ideas and creative initiatives, but we as ExxonMobil, as well as other operators, we're doing our piece of contribution to develop local supply markets to make supplier competitive. And so we are keeping that commitment. So I thought that during this pandemic, my workload was going to be very low because of not that many activities, but I'm very happy that this has brought a lot of work to me in terms of looking for creative initiative to support more local suppliers. So it is important that we have events like this where we can actually communicate what's the expectation from operators, from suppliers. So again, VCPs is very important. I also want to mention that price is not the only factor that we consider. Your safety capabilities, your business ethics is very important to us, and you will see if you get to participate in one of our tender processes that we are very thorough with our due diligence process. So a strong company has to have a strong business ethics, and should be one of the main pillars. Safety first all the time. We even as employees, we have kind of been brainwashed on how safety has to be first for everyone. So I actually encourage suppliers also to start with safety in your tenders, safety in your meetings, so safety on top of everything. And this is the next one is very important, leveraging our strategic partners. Because here we have our major partner in the supply diversity arena is We Connect International, and not that we are not taking into consideration male-owned businesses, but definitely We Connect International is our strategic partner in supporting women-owned businesses. And that's how we internally, our leaders, we are promoting the support of supply diversity internally, making sure that our procurement contracts advisors include in their tender process women-owned businesses. And I wanted to share here some of our supply registration portals that we have in some of our operations. We actually encourage you to sign up or register, and that's how we get access to companies locally. So with that, I'll be open to questions when our moderator give us the opportunity, and I'm happy to have shared this information with you.
Thank you very much, Adriana. Thank you so much. Just remind the audience, please feel free to use the Q&A box at the bottom. We're waiting for your questions, so please start to post your questions as soon as you can. We have another batch of polling questions. I don't know if anyone has polled yet. There's one question there still on how your organization is doing regarding rebuilding itself, reinventing itself. How well do you think your organization is doing? And the second question is more for leaders. What is most important? What's the most important strategy for you in this season? Is it to retrain and improve change management skills? Is it to revisit your budget and implement the best cost-cutting system? Or is it for staff role transitioning and redeployment? So please take your poll there and let's see what we get so that Mr. Udom can react to that. We'll just give another 20 seconds and we're good to go. So can we please see the results? We have a very positive crowd here. I like this. 52% say somewhat resilient. So their organizations are doing quite well. We still have our 4% that are not very optimistic. And they're saying that the organizations are really not doing that great. On number 2, regarding leaders. So the winner here is to revisit the budget. Everyone is always thinking in numbers, you know, for obvious reasons, and you expect a leader to do that. While coming up after that is the fact that they need to train people to improve their change management skills. That's interesting. A few people think the redeployment of staff, you know, is also quite important, but we have no other. So I guess all the solutions to the problems we're facing right now are within the first 4 that we've put up there. So that's a good thing. Mr. Odom, what do you think? I think you need to unmute. Okay.
I am not surprised as to the response. First, we're talking to energy experts who have been used to risk management and they are quite resilient.
Yes.
And only we're talking to business owners who are always very conscious of their budgets. But given my HR bias, I would say, don't mess around with your people. We always talk about people being our greatest assets. Focus on how you can train and effectively utilize your people.
Yes. Fantastic. Please go ahead with your presentation now.
So since I'm speaking largely to those engaged in the energy sector, let me start with a personal confession. I joined this sector mainly because the pay was good, really good. It was only when I arrived that I realized that the real nature of the business is risk management. And anybody who is constantly engaged in risk mitigation cannot be said to be having fun. You are constantly on the edge, knowing that mistakes could be very, very costly. And if you're operating in an environment like Nigeria, that adds an additional flavor. So I'm sure that most of you must have realized that leadership is not a spectator's game. If you're a leader, you are significantly under pressure. In my 31 years career in the oil industry, 20 of which was in leadership role, I came to appreciate and embrace the importance of agility and resilience for the success of leaders and the sustainability of the business. And I want to use 3 examples to illustrate this. In 2002, I was appointed General Manager, External Relations for ExxonMobil companies in Nigeria. And my brief was essentially to bolster relationship with the publics, communities, media, government, subnational and national levels. And of course, increasing number of NGOs. Nigeria's 4th Republic had just started, but the Niger Delta region was unsettled, especially following the Ogoni crisis, the extrajudicial killings of notable agitators by the military. The oil-producing states were now demanding for the control of oil and gas resources in their backyard, using the political process. But these efforts were also complemented by armed struggle, including militancy by aggrieved youths. Coming from the region, it was a frightening assignment for me. And this was my first encounter with disruption. Secondly, we all know the nature of the business, the oil and gas business, with price downturn and other uncertainties. Some of you may recall what happened between 2007 and 2008 with the global financial crisis. Oil price crashing from $147 to $30 a barrel. Or between 2014 and 2015, when OPEC members consistently exceeded their production ceiling. China experienced a marked slowdown in economic growth, and the US oil production nearly doubled due to substantial improvements in shale fracking technology. While these periods forced companies globally to adjust their business strategies, in Nigeria, it was not easy. As a HR director, it was my job to manage employee headcount. Business was going down, communities will not listen, government will not appreciate, employees will not allow you to reject the organization. How do you manage redundancy or separation programs? I took responsibility for several union strikes, and I will never forget my first encounter with the production shutting. I felt like passing out. I caused an entire production to be shut in. That was a terrible period. And unfortunately, had to deal with various ministries, departments, and agencies of government who obviously are pro-union and had no clue as to how to be supportive of business. More disruptions were to follow. My worst experience occurred 2018 when the Supreme Court of Nigeria conferred employment status on almost 1,000 security personnel, making them employees of ExxonMobil instead of Nigerian police force. We complied with the judgment, exercised our rights under labor law and internal company policies, but what did we have? 7 weeks of lockdown of all company facilities, including residential estates. I'm using these 3 experiences to demonstrate how disruptive, challenging, and painful this sector has been. And if you're in a leadership role, while COVID-19 is at a different level, at least you must have learned something over the years. So how did I journey through all this? And what framed my leadership disposition? The first one is preparation. And I like the story of Noah that Patricia talked about. Nothing enables leadership success more than preparation and being forward-looking. While a blue sky is every pilot's delight, pilots also recognize that weather disruptions, abnormal and emergency conditions are likely. Hence, they invest substantial amount of time on simulator flight training programs. So I just want to assume that all of you out there who are business leaders understand that the new normal has come to stay, and you have to adjust. So please continue to be cautious, but do not embark on what you don't fully understand. The Department of Petroleum Resources has invited all of us for marginal field bids. Don't jump in without doing their work very well. The second point I want to stress is having the right team. There is no such thing as a perfect team, but a good leader can mold a reliable team, enabling everyone to row in the same direction, especially in moments of crisis. The last thing you want is not to have your team members together with you, not to have employees understanding the challenges of the business. Focus on winning the confidence of your employees by treating them well. Have an open door policy. It promotes inclusion and diversity. Celebrate happy moments, but also show empathy. And Patricia alluded to this. We all need one another at this time. The third point, feedback. You know, as a leader, you may think you have it all there and you're doing the right things for the business. And generally, you may be doing the right things, but it is important that you should be interested in feedback from peers and subordinates. And there are various tools you could use. I got tons of feedback which were useful, though initially, some of them had the tendency to alter my personality. For example, I will never forget a 2006 survey which suggested that I could do better by being a good listener. I didn't like it. I was hesitant to agree with them until I naively shared it with my wife, who endorsed the employee feedback. She told me I needed to listen. So I knew that was an area I had to pay attention to. You know, in our climb, there's a tendency by some to believe that leadership is synonymous with wisdom. And that is not always the case. Depend on your employees. Fourth thing I want to throw up is self-discipline. And I'll just use the quote of Plato. For a man to conquer himself is the first and noblest of all victories. If you are self-disciplined, you'll make progress. Fifth one, clarity of purpose. Sometimes leaders don't communicate very well what they want. Be sure that your communication is clear and everybody gets to understand what you really want. If things are not going well with the company, communicate. If things are going well, let them know. If there are challenges, be honest. Overall, at a corporate level, we need to create the right culture, especially a culture that recognizes that things are no longer the way they used to be. Then at a personal level, everybody listening to me who is a leader, please make sure you have your personal values. The ones I used were simply a strong belief in God, hard work, discipline, and integrity. And those are the things that enabled me to push forward despite the disruptions that I faced. I wish you well. This time shall also pass by, and most of you will come out very, very strong. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I like that you used your own personal stories to just teach so much. Thank you for letting us understand the importance of preparing, adjusting, taking care of your team, and also getting feedback as often as possible. Thank you for that. So this is our final poll. Can everyone please take part, and then we'll move on to the Q&A segment. So this question is for you as a person. Are you resilient as a leader? Please be honest. And Toby, can we please have the results? Thank you. So this is a good one. 50% believe that they're doing quite okay. So thank you very much, Toby, for all those poll questions. My first question is going to go to Patricia. Your presentation was very interesting. You gave us as leaders a lot to think about in your presentation. Could you kindly help us distill maybe 2 to 3 key steps your organization as an Indigenous company is doing to prepare and also adjust in this season?
Thanks for the question. I think right at the very beginning, as I said, you need to accept the situation. As I said, it's fire on the mountain. I saw that early on, and I think by the 20th of March, we decided we had a management meeting and decided we're going to shut down operations, that is office operations, and just monitor closely those we had on the field. We had some ongoing jobs, and so we decided to take that early on. So assessing the situation and seeing that the crisis was evolving and our staff coming and going to work every day could put a lot of them at risk. Safety was first, and so that was the first consideration. And for us, because we already had the second point, which is making sure you have technology in place and the tools to work remotely and collaborate as members of staff, that was already in place. We already had business continuity plans in place. How are we going to work if there is disruption to the system? So that was already in place. So we're able to move fast without our operations coming to a close. We actually use things like Google Docs. Our accounting system is all in the cloud. So everything we do is on the cloud, and it has been for the last 2 years. So we've gotten to the place where we could work. And so that was the second thing. So just to make sure all my employees, the key employees, identified the ones that we really needed to make sure that they had the tools. So make sure they had their laptops and made sure they had enough data. So instead of the corporate data in the office as well, they also all had, so we equipped all of them to make sure that they could communicate outside the office and had what they needed. The third thing we did, we're part of PETAN, and so as PETAN, we also engaged government. That was very important because there were issues that a lot of member companies were having, and we needed to band together and make presentations and try and get the necessary intervention. I won't go into the details, but we did do quite a bit, which gave comfort to a lot of our members with the challenges they were having with government, challenges they were having with their customers, and challenges they were having just in general moving around and mobilizing for jobs and moving personnel and equipment around. So that's what we did. So those were basically the three things we did a lot of to try and make sure that we could work. I'll just mention those three. I think that's basically the three.
Yes. Thank you very much for that. Ileana, I'll come to you now. As you are aware, inclusion and diversity is more than just fulfilling the moral imperative. Research has proven that it propels organizational performance, that organizations do better, once they have a good mix of gender, diversity generally. So can you just tell me what ExxonMobil is doing in this season to make sure that diversity is still front and center?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I have to say that we've been very focused on actually the fact that we have a function inside our organization that focuses on supply diversity. It's really says pretty much how important and how deep rooted in our values is the piece of inclusion and diversity, and not just as a company in with our people, but also in the supply chain. So we have a very strong program in the US because we have more diverse suppliers in the US. But outside the US, our program focuses more on women-owned businesses, and I'm kind of the lead on that effort. As I've mentioned before, we relied on our strategic partner, which is We Connect International. We Connect International, it's actually pretty much an incredible partner that supports and actually trains, coach, and provide all the tools that women-owned business need. In Nigeria, We Connect is very strong in terms of representation. And I have to kind of admit that we use a lot in all our procurement managers and contracting advisors. They use the We Connect database as a source to finding women-owned business in the different regions. So I encourage that all women-owned business self-register or either register, because that's our go-to portal to look for women-owned businesses. So going back to your question, I think it's important that we support women, not just in the entrepreneurship, but also on the education, on bringing them the confidence that women need to develop their businesses. There's a very important proverb, I think it came from Nigeria, that says, when women move forward, the world moves with them. So, and I strongly believe in that. Women pretty much, if we work in a family, regardless where we are in the world, women are the ones that decide where that money is going to go. And usually People would say that women would only want to go shopping. Yes, we go shopping for our kids. We invest our money and the income that we get monthly. First, I have to go to the health, education, and the welfare of our family. So that's pretty much who gets that decided. What piece of our budget goes to that is the women. So yes. With that, we have a really powerful in that sense. So the same, if you use that mindset that women have and you put it in the supply chain, in the business, then you're going to have a really good effect on the overall economy of a country. So that's what I think supporting women entrepreneurs is very important. And we have a very formal process. We are engaging in different events. I personally coach several women-owned businesses, informally, formally, outside the company, and we have a very strong group of advocates. Our advocates within ExxonMobil, it's more than 500 people, not just in procurement, but also from the business line. So that's very, very incredible. So I'm very proud of our advocates in that sense.
Thank you very much. I do agree with your point. Thank you. A question has come up now, and it's a very interesting question. So I'm going to throw it at Patricia and also Mr. Odom. Because the question says, as a woman, how do I build leadership resilience in a male-dominated industry? So I want to hear a woman's perspective, and I also want to hear that of a man. So can we please start with Mr. Odom first? You're not a woman, but as a woman, whoever's asking the question, how do you actually become a resilient leader in a male-dominated industry?
Well, the good news is that I always like using personal experiences to talk to people. I have a wife who's been in business for the last 80 years. At some point, she was making more money than me. And what saw her through our business? It goes back again to core values. You know, you're believing God, you're working very hard, you're being disciplined, you're having integrity. Those are values that you can never make a mistake with. I don't want to belittle, you know, the challenge that a female folks face, whether it is in business or in the workplace. It is challenging. I will never forget an experience my second daughter had. She was studying mechanical engineering at that time in Boston University and was in a project group. Only female in the class. She got it right, but all the boys thought she was wrong until the professor pointed to her, and she was really, or pointed to them that they should have done it differently. She was upset, reached out to me about boys not listening, basically men not listening. And I took that at a personal level because in ExxonMobil, where I was the HR director, 50% of the staff were female. So I used that as a teachable moment. When you walk into that room as a male leader, do you truly allow diversity of opinions? Or are you blinded to the fact that there are certain people based on gender or whatsoever that may not, you know, be able to give you what you really want? So I recognize the sensitivity, but my advice is keep pushing, adhere to your core values, and you will break that glass ceiling and make it. That's why I like people like Fumi. I mean, look at this Women in Energy Network. You could have been sitting down complaining, but Fumi decided with other notable ladies in the energy sector to say, look, we need to get our voice, you know, heard. Let's set up a team. And I'm glad that they invited 2 males, you know, myself and Tony Atta, to join them. And today we are advocates. Wherever we go to, we talk about when. So don't give up. Whosoever asks that question.
Thank you very much for that. Madam Patricia, can we hear from you, please?
So it's the question is on being a resilient leader, a female resilient leader in a dominated sector. Yes, so I think some of the qualities or the qualities that of a resilient leader, women have them, their innate qualities. We're empathetic. I mean, we do listen to people a lot, and we empathize with our staff. And so sometimes you're even in a better position there. For me, as a leader in a male-dominated society or industry, I've not really ever set myself apart. So, and I just make sure I come into a room prepared. I know what I'm asking for. I know what I'm presenting. I know what my products and services are all about. I'm not ignorant. And you speak confidently about what you know. I think, I guess, and in most cases, when you know what you're talking about, you'll be heard. Yes, there are cases where people try and brush over women within the room, but when it comes to leadership within your organization, you'll find out they still listen to you because you're able to communicate, you're able to empathize, and you're able to, in general, just have a good and positive attitude. And I think they feed off that. So your employees feed off your attitude and your position, which is the way I've tried to run my organization, basically.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you. So I have another question for Eliana. This is more towards, I'm glad you spoke more on supply, what you expect from your suppliers as a leading oil and gas company. So this question, someone is asking that we've been talking about best practice. What's the worst practice? What should people not do in this season? And she's saying, please go ahead and be honest, because iron sharpens iron. So please, can you let us know what is a no-no in this season?
Yeah, and that's a really good question, and I appreciate asking the don'ts, because always easy to say, oh, what you should do best, but sometimes it's easier to say what should not be done. Number one, I would say, don't lie. If you're not ready, if you don't have the capability, if you don't have a process, if you don't feel strong that on safety, don't lie, because that's worse. Trust, it's something that it's very important to and once you establish it, it's something that we take really serious. And if you break it, then there's not going to be another second chance. So don't lie in terms of, your capabilities. Don't lie in your delivery terms. Don't lie on things like, oh yeah, we have the volume. If you don't have the volume, just say it. Because you're not going to get disqualified if you say, well, I'm not going to be able to deliver by that day, but I can do it by this time. Does it work? And really, we can be flexible, and we understand that especially small and medium companies have challenges, and we work around those challenges. So I think that's number one. Don't lie in anything. Be honest, and establish that trust. The other thing is that there's never a stupid question. So ask the stupid questions. Don't be ashamed of not asking questions. So don't be afraid. And this goes especially for women-owned business. Don't be afraid that you're gonna get a rejection, that if you don't win the first time. You will learn that first time. But if you don't take the risk, if you don't take that first step, you're never going to get there. Trust, have confidence, and don't say, leave the fear behind you, because really there are more things to be afraid of that you don't have control. But for your business, you do have control. You can do a lot of that. And again, going back to no lies. If you are clear and transparent, that's very important. Other thing is that I mentioned about our due diligence process and how we actually make sure that your company is running under our business standards in terms of ethics. And as I said, making a mistake there or hiding information, it's just not going to get you on the first. It's not going to get you in a good position. So your transparency, your coming up front with anything, it's better than hiding it. So I think that's very important. Expectations. All suppliers have expectations, and I think not all the time we can meet your expectations in terms of well, you know that ExxonMobil is there and we're going to give contracts and we're going to hire everyone. We cannot do it. You have to compete. So don't compete only on price. Quality is very important. And how you support other businesses. I mean, how you even do your own local content, how you support your own supply market, your own people. It's very important to us. That's what when we evaluate our proposals, our competitive bid tenders, we assign a big portion to local content, because we have to meet local content, but sometimes it's not required in Nigeria if you have a regulation, but sometimes it's because it's the right thing to do. So, and the easiest way and the more correct way to do it is also through our main suppliers. So I hope this helped.
Yes, it does. Thank you. So in a nutshell, honesty, ask questions, and also manage expectations. Thank you very much for that. We have another question. This will be for Mr. Udom, please. So you spoke about the labor crisis and you spoke about the financial crisis too, and how you figured out yourself in those tough seasons. There's a question here saying, at what point do you adjust your business plan? So looking at COVID pandemic, for example, did you review your plan just as it hits, or is it now that you're redoing and adjusting your business plan? So what would you advise this person asking the question? When do you adjust your business plan?
I started by saying that we are all in the business of risk management or mitigation. So it is always good to have various options, especially when you're working in a volatile business environment or sector. So just being proactive helps. So I would say if this is a new business, a startup, and you are caught up with this challenging situation, I can understand why some of the folks may be surprised, maybe taken aback, and they need to adjust immediately. Otherwise, they will go under. But for businesses that have been on for quite some time, I don't think they have been badly decimated or impacted, because they have always been thinking about, unlikely situations that can disrupt the business. So it all depends. For all businesses, I think this is the time to take a hard look as to how you're running your affairs and make adjustments when necessary. Because this is the new normal. It's going to be here for a long time.
Thank you for that, sir. Thank you. Just before you go, another question. Please, can you give practical steps that you take day to day on preparing as a leader? What do you do on a daily basis regarding your business, and how do you manage the business flow in this season of uncertainty? Day to day.
I think there are two parts to that question. The first part is, why are you a leader? What makes you a leader? Because you may think you are a leader when you are not. And for you to be a leader, you must be in a position to influence people, in a practical sense, where they believe in you and where they defer to you. That is where values come to play. In that kind of situation, you won't be challenged, when you get into a disruptive environment, letting people understand that they need to row in the same direction with you. Secondly, in the moment, what do you need to do? Just being honest to your folks. Just don't feel super. There is nobody who is super in this arena. Sometimes leaders don't want to feel or give a sense of vulnerability, but it makes you real, and it makes people also understand that you're facing some challenges. But lastly, something I think I forgot to mention, which is very key. As a leader, take care of yourself. You're on the stage, everybody's looking up to you. Who are you looking up to? You need to take care of yourself, be in the right frame of mind, you know, be physically strong, otherwise you're not gonna be able to lead in a disruptive situation. Take care of yourself.
I think I find that very fantastic. In fact, I think taking care of yourself is very, very important. I'll throw another question to you, Madam Patricia. You spoke a little bit on empathy, and we as women, that being one of our qualities. So I'd like us to go a bit broader on the human factors part of things. This is a very sensitive time for a lot of people, especially our employees. So can you just speak a bit more on how to manage, you know, you mentioned that some of them understand and have adjusted pretty fast, but some others haven't. So can you just give us, with real life situations or any stories from your colleagues or partners on how they're doing it and succeeding at it?
Yes, for empathy and for staff in general, you'll see in a crisis situation, different members of staff actually respond differently. Some will have natural leadership capabilities and abilities, and some are more resilient, and some are have a more positive outlook. So for me, I identified the core leaders that had a positive outlook, that were looking to the new opportunities that were emerging, and also those who could cope better, you know, in the remote environment, who were self-starters, who were didn't need much supervision. And those are sort of, you know, you find out, okay, these are now your core team. And I identified that core team. But when it comes to empathy, you also find out that some put in a position where they have to really work on their own, or work in an environment where they have other stresses, such as taking care of children at home, taking care of their children's education at home. And so a good number of, especially the female employees amongst us, have several challenges, also taking care of their husband at the same time. And so you really have to try and understand that, okay, they might not be able to deliver as and when you need it, or as and when you ask for it, or when it's supposed to come in. So maybe they're not working during the normal working hours, you know, during the day because they have the children at the moment at home. But maybe they're working later on in the evening. So I found out my accountant was working more, you know, maybe after 6 or 7. She was doing a lot of work at night, and I get emails at, you know, at 10 o'clock or something. And so the whole business environment was different, and you have to try and understand their position as well. And then some were feeling ill. And so you didn't know whether it was COVID or not. Some went for test, it was negative, but just that general stress, you just have to understand that, okay, everybody's not working in the optimal environment, and then just try and understand, you know, that it's not a normal environment, so your expectations are less. So what I did internally for us was actually have more of a task-oriented kind of performance indicators, which we have implemented internally. And so, you know, okay, you have deadlines and these are the tasks. And so they're able to just make sure that they do what they're meant to do within the time frame given. But I'm not as strict, and even now where we're sort of working in the office as well as working remotely, we still have it quite flexible so that it can also accommodate their own personal situations, basically.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you. Liana, my final question comes to you. Zane, I would like to know what the IOCs like yourselves, what you're doing in relations to human factors, you know, things relating to this environment. Are people being disgruntled, or what kind of what kind of things are your staff experiencing in this season, and how are you managing it? And then I'll throw the second question to you again. You mentioned that there's some initiatives that ExxonMobil is doing. You mentioned that there's the EDC one being done in Guyana. I was wondering, is there anything you're doing specifically for women in this season? I'm sure a lot of WIAN members would like to know this. So please let us know. Thank you.
Thank you. So question number one about the human factor. our company has been always very supportive of their employees, and as I mentioned, first safety first, but that safety and health, it's all being that. So the mental wellness of the employees, it's also plays an important role. We have had, even not during this pandemic, but we have had for a long time ago, the flexible work program. So if you need to stay at home and work from home, the company actually give you that flexibility in terms of coping with any situation that you have at home. So in XMO, as long as you get your work goals and your work done, really doesn't matter when you do it. And so you are kind of responsible, and you take the leadership of what you do. You're your own leader, and you sometimes have to work with a lot of team members. And again, they don't have to be just in front of you to be able to work as a team. So here we are. I've been working from home since even before the COVID, because of personal reasons. I have someone that is going through cancer right now in my family. So the company has been very supportive in all that. And I have been able to do my work. I think I'm actually have been even more efficient. Even when you work in a big city like in Houston, the commute actually can take 2 hours of your time, and then you have things to do at home. You can decide one time, say to your boss, I'm going to stay today at home and work, and really what you need is your computer and good internet connection. So I'm very proud of that and very grateful for that. On the second question, you asked about our Enterprise Development Center in Guyana. This is not the only center that we have that XMO, we're also establishing one in Mozambique. We have one in Papua New Guinea, and we have plans to do others. That it's not kind of owned by XMO, we sponsor it. We like to give it the opportunity to local entity to run it and to actually create a sustainable entity for that country. And in terms of initiative, there's so much that can be done in an enterprise development center. Specifically on Guyana, as I said, we switched to face-to-face courses to virtual courses, and we give all kinds of training to suppliers. Even when you have a starter company that doesn't even have a computer at home, they can actually use a computer from the center. If they want to have some sort of support, what do I need to do, what forms I need to do, or how can I develop a proposal to participate, not just for XMO, but for other operators, they can give you that support. So I think that model has been very successful, and we're trying to replicate it in other places. Again, it has been a combination of not only our effort, but also with the support from other major suppliers. So
thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you, Len. Thank you very much. Yeah, so now our time is fast spent, but I'd like every speaker to please give us a 2 minutes or 3 minutes roundup from all we've discussed today. What are your last thoughts, that you would like to share with the audience? I'll start with Madam Patricia, please. I think you're muted. You're muted.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, I think I was just going to go back to my last slide where I mentioned you just need to prepare and plan for crisis. You don't, we do in the sector plan for emergency response, but we need to plan for crisis. So have crisis management plans in place and very robust business continuity plans also in place. And then identify how you're going to communicate and have a clear communication strategy for it as well. And then, as we've all said here, be honest, be open, be authentic about what's going on so that your employees know what's going on, your suppliers know what's going on, your customers know what's going on as well. And then update early and often. And then finally, just make sure you can do it now. You should start doing it if you already don't have remote working tools and collaborative tools in place, start putting those in place so that you are prepared for the next rainy day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ileana, would you like to do a quick sum up?
Yeah, I would like to give two recommendations or advice from the professional view. Support, coach, mentor another business. If you're a woman, support women. Sometimes we need to support each other, and also to men, support your sister, your daughter, your mother, because those are the ones that are trying to set up their business. And from the personal view, be an example. Be the leader you want to be, not just to in your company, but be also the leader and example to your family, to your kids, to everybody, because they'll take the cue from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Liana. Just to say that our thoughts and prayers are with the person you mentioned earlier. I'm sure all will be well. And can we please have Mr. Odom's conclusion now?
Just three quick things. And Ileana mentioned one. Integrity is very critical. Don't cut corners if you're in business. Just keep it simple and be honest. Second one, take care of yourself, and that will enable you to take care of your team. Then lastly, don't forget that you are not alone. Everybody has been impacted by COVID-19. And while the private sector may be quite agile and thinking about various ways of making changes in the business, never you forget the big elephant in the room, which is the government, national and subnational levels. It is important that we utilize all platforms available, including WIN, to engage critical stakeholders in government. Otherwise, we'll not be rowing in the same direction. You could be doing all the right things, and somebody will sit down in one corner and frustrate all the efforts. All the business folks out there, I'm in retirement and I'm enjoying my retirement. God bless you.
Thank you very much, sir, for that conclusion. Our leaders, our speakers today have shared how themselves and their organizations manage crises, especially the one the world is facing right now. So some of the key points I noted down is that a leader needs to use technology to support business continuity. Also, collaboration, partnerships is a good strategy to help cut costs. They also mentioned the need for diversity and gender representation. Also, we mentioned how it's important to carefully assess your risks and opportunities and take advantage of the opportunities that are presented to you in this new landscape. So while it may seem obvious, uncertain times are uncertain because they affect people. However, leaders can sometimes become trapped by focusing on daily metrics like share price, revenue, costs, and forget one of the most important components in an organization, the people. And I'm really glad we spoke a lot about people and how to take good care of our people. Therefore, in a crisis, it's important that there's clear and consistent communication from leadership to reassure employees that the company has resources to weather through the storm. Some jobs, majority of the jobs, hopefully, will be protected, and that there's a clear plan to service existing customers and protect the company's cash flow. A leader's job is to create an environment in which people are constantly thinking of new ways of doing things and doing it better. It is true that we may emerge from this uncertain times very different as workers, as managers, as leaders, and as human beings generally. But with resilience, we can come out stronger and better for it. To my distinguished speakers, thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us today. It is much appreciated. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for participating in our wonderful polls and also asking questions. I hope you found today very informative. Please don't forget the session tomorrow. Make sure you do register. And if you'd like to listen to this session again, it's been recorded and we can share with you via email if you contact the WIN Secretariat. Again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. I hope you found this very interesting. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye.